She didn't kidnap them. She was saving them. They are your children. For hours he hunted her like a criminal, the woman he thought had stolen the triplets. Now, the truth hit him like lightning. The maid in his private jet wasn't a kidnapper. She was the guardian of his greatest secret, and he was about to discover that everything he believed about his life was a lie. Catherine Wilson stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the Millennium Tower penthouse, her trembling hand clutching a positive pregnancy test. Snow fell relentlessly over Chicago's skyline, blanketing the city in white silence that matched the void expanding inside her chest. At 26, she had been Maxwell Richards' executive housekeeper for nearly 2 years, but his lover for only 8 months. 8 months of secret encounters when he returned from business trips, of promises whispered in the darkness of dawn. She placed her free hand protectively over her still flat stomach. Inside her grew life, unexpected, unplanned, but already fiercely loved. Catherine turned from the panoramic view and glanced at her reflection in the marble-framed mirror. She had taken extra care with her appearance tonight, wearing her only good dress, a navy blue sheath purchased during a rare sale at Nordstrom last year. Her chestnut hair was swept into a neat chignon, her makeup subtle but deliberate. She wanted to look composed when she told him. The distant ding of the private elevator sent her heart racing. Catherine quickly tucked the pregnancy test into her pocket and smoothed her dress. One final glance in the mirror. One final deep breath. "Catherine? Are you still here?" Maxwell's voice carried from the foyer, warm and rich with the confidence of old money and impeccable education. "In the living room," she called back, her voice steadier than she felt. Maxwell Richards strode in, 32 years of privileged upbringing evident in every movement. Heir to Richards Enterprises, the country's third-largest pharmaceutical company, he carried himself with the easy assurance of someone who had never heard the word no. His tailored suit still looked fresh despite the late hour and the board meeting he'd just attended. When his eyes met Catherine's, his customary smile faltered. "Is everything all right?" he asked, loosening his tie. "You're usually gone by now." Catherine clasped her hands to stop them from shaking. "I needed to talk to you about something important." Maxwell nodded, crossing to the marble bar. "Let me just pour a drink first. It's been a long day. The board is pushing for more aggressive expansion in Asia, and my father—" He stopped, finally registering her unusual appearance. "You look different tonight." "I'm pregnant, Max," she said, the words barely audible in the vast, minimalist space. The silence that followed was sharper than the frigid wind howling outside. Maxwell stood motionless, the crystal decanter of whiskey suspended mid-pour. Slowly, deliberately, he completed the action, filled the glass to the brim, and drained half of it in one swallow before speaking. "Are you sure it's mine?" he asked, his voice clinically cold. The question hit Catherine like a physical blow. She took a step back, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "How can you ask that? You know there's been no one else." Maxwell released a short, humorless laugh. "Catherine, let's be realistic. You're a domestic worker from South Side. I'm the future CEO of the third-largest pharmaceutical company in the country. My family has expectations. The board has expectations." "But you said you loved me," Catherine whispered, the first tears escaping despite her resolve to remain composed. "I said what you needed to hear." Maxwell refilled his glass, not meeting her eyes. "Frankly, did you really believe it? A woman of your background? Did you honestly think I would ruin my future for someone like you?" Each word pierced Catherine like shrapnel, fragmenting the future she had dared to imagine. She watched, stunned, as Maxwell walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and removed his checkbook. With calculated movements, he uncapped a Mont Blanc pen and began writing. $50,000, he said, sliding the check across the coffee table toward her. "Enough to solve your problem and start fresh in another city. I suggest Minneapolis. I hear the cost of living is reasonable." "I don't want your money," Catherine responded, rising to her feet. "I want you to acknowledge your child." Maxwell's face hardened, all pretense of the charming lover vanishing completely. "Don't be stupid. If you insist on this pregnancy, I'll deny any involvement. I have a legal team that will make your life hell. You are nothing, Catherine, just a temporary convenience. This child would be a mistake I'm not willing to make." The words carved themselves into Catherine's memory, each syllable a separate wound. She stood frozen as Maxwell picked up his phone and dialed security. "Jenkins, I need an escort for Miss Wilson." Immediately. 20 minutes later, Catherine stood on the snow-covered sidewalk outside Millennium Tower, clutching a hastily packed suitcase and the check which, against her initial resolve, she had accepted out of sheer desperation. Her apartment, provided as part of her employment, was no longer hers. Her job, gone. Her relationship, a cruel illusion. She looked up at the illuminated penthouse where Maxwell would be continuing his evening, perhaps already forgetting their conversation. A single tear slid down her cheek, freezing before it reached her chin. The doorman averted his eyes, a mixture of pity and embarrassment on his face. "Can I call you a taxi, Miss Wilson?" he asked quietly. Catherine nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. As she waited, clutching her coat tightly against the biting wind, she made a silent promise to the life growing inside her. Whatever happened, her child would know they were wanted. Her child would be loved. The following weeks unfolded in a nightmare sequence. Maxwell's money, which she swore to spend only on the baby, paid for a room at a cheap motel in North Side while she looked for work. Her mornings were spent in employment offices, her afternoons trudging through snow between interviews, her evenings crying silently into a thin pillow that smelled of industrial detergent. In February, the second shock came. During an appointment at a community clinic, the ultrasound technician's eyes widened. "Ms. Wilson, I'm seeing multiple heartbeats here. 3, actually. You're carrying triplets." News that should have been met with champagne and celebration was delivered in a cramped examination room where a kind nurse squeezed her hand in silent solidarity. "3 babies," Catherine whispered, staring at the grainy black and white images. 3. The motel room seemed smaller that night. The $50,000, which had seemed a fortune, suddenly appeared woefully inadequate for the needs of 4 people. Catherine lay awake calculating and recalculating her dwindling resources. By March, she had secured 3 jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop, afternoon work cleaning offices, and evening data entry for a small logistics company. Her expanding body protested the punishing schedule, but her determination grew proportionally to her belly. When the motel became too expensive, she moved to a women's shelter in Uptown, swallowing her pride with each day's free meal. It was at the shelter that Catherine met Dr. Eleanor Reeves, a retired pediatrician who volunteered providing basic prenatal care. The elderly doctor was impressed by Catherine's resilience and her dedication to her unborn babies. "You have a natural knowledge of infant care," Dr. Reeves commented after Catherine asked insightful questions about fetal development. "I always wanted to study pediatric nursing," Catherine confessed, rubbing her growing belly, "but my family couldn't afford it." One April evening, while washing dishes at the coffee shop after her shift, Catherine heard Maxwell Richards' voice from the kitchen television. He was being interviewed on CNBC, speaking about his newly announced fiancée, Cassandra Beaumont, heiress to a hotel chain. "I'm looking forward to building a traditional family with solid values," he declared to the interviewer, his arm around a slender blonde woman wearing an engagement ring that could have funded Catherine's entire education. Catherine dropped a plate, watching it shatter on the floor, a perfect metaphor for her heart. That night, in the small shelter room she shared with another pregnant woman, she stood before the mirror, hands on her prominent belly. "He's wrong about me, about us," she whispered to her unborn children, "and one day I'll prove it, not as revenge but as truth." "You 3, she murmured to the babies, will be extraordinary, not despite him, but to demonstrate that I was always enough. In May, Dr. Reeves introduced Catherine to a friend who ran a struggling small pediatric clinic. They needed an administrative assistant. The salary was modest, but it included health insurance. Catherine accepted immediately. "You have a remarkable spirit," Dr. Reeves told her as they walked out of the successful interview. "Most people would have broken under the circumstances you've faced." Catherine smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time in months. "I'm not most people, and I have 3 very good reasons to be unbreakable." For the first time since her abandonment, a plan began forming in her mind. A plan that would eventually transform not only her life, but the landscape of pediatric healthcare across America. As Catherine walked away from the clinic that day, her hand protectively cradling her belly, she couldn't know that 15 years later, when Catherine Wilson would be announced as the CEO of the multi-billion-dollar company that revolutionized the American healthcare sector, her extraordinary rise would begin precisely at this moment of absolute helplessness. Catherine held the clinic job offer letter in her hands, the paper already wrinkling slightly from her tight grip. For the first time since that snowy January night, she felt a flicker of hope, a tiny flame in the vast darkness that had engulfed her life. As she walked away, a plan forming in her mind, she couldn't yet see the empire that would rise from these ashes of abandonment. The following weeks tested Catherine's endurance beyond what she thought possible. In her small motel room on the north side, she sat cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by budget calculations scribbled on hotel notepaper. Maxwell's check, $50,000 that felt simultaneously like a fortune and woefully inadequate, had been deposited into a new account. Each time she withdrew money, shame and determination warred within her. "This is for the babies," she whispered to herself, counting out rent money. "Not for me. Everything is for them now." The motel was dingy but clean, with a microwave and mini fridge that allowed her to avoid expensive takeout. Each morning, Catherine awoke at 5, reviewing job listings while eating peanut butter on toast. Her pregnancy symptoms, the nausea, the fatigue, the swollen ankles, she endured silently, without complaint. There was no one to complain to anyway. February arrived with bitter winds and another appointment at the community clinic. Catherine sat alone in the small examination room, hands folded protectively over her slightly rounded belly. Dr. Martinez entered with a kind smile that quickly transformed into professional concern as she studied the ultrasound screen. "Ms. Wilson, I'm detecting multiple heartbeats here." "Multiple?" Catherine's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Yes." Dr. Martinez adjusted the wand on Catherine's abdomen. 3 distinct fetuses. You're carrying triplets." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "Triplets," Catherine repeated, the word both terrifying and miraculous. A nurse named Sophia squeezed her hand while Dr. Martinez explained the increased risks, the need for specialized care, the likelihood of bed rest in later months. Catherine nodded mechanically, absorbing the information like a computer processing data. "Do you have someone who can help you through this?" Sophia asked gently after the doctor left. Catherine hesitated, then shook her head. "Number? But I'll manage." Walking back to the motel, snow seeping through the worn soles of her boots, Catherine did mental calculations. 3 babies meant triple everything: clothes, diapers, formula if breastfeeding proved difficult. $50,000 would evaporate like morning dew. That evening, Catherine began her job search with renewed urgency. Her experience as an executive housekeeper had given her skills in organization, attention to detail, and discretion. But revealing her pregnancy inevitably changed the expressions of potential employers. Doors closed before they fully opened. After a week of rejections, Catherine lowered her standards. A coffee shop near the clinic needed morning help. The manager, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, barely glanced at Catherine's growing belly. "Can you start tomorrow?" 5 a.m. prep shift. Catherine nodded gratefully. I can work afternoons too, if needed. The manager raised an eyebrow. You sure that's wise in your condition? I'm having triplets, Catherine said simply. I need as many hours as possible. Something like respect flickered in the manager's eyes. Let's start with mornings, see how it goes. The coffee shop job barely covered food and transportation. By March, Catherine had secured 2 additional positions, cleaning offices in a downtown building during afternoons and remote data entry for a small logistics company in the evenings. Her days began at 4:30 in the morning and ended past midnight, her pregnant body protesting the punishing schedule. At the coffee shop, she learned to smile through morning sickness, ducking into the bathroom between customers. At the office building, she developed techniques to clean without straining her back, kneeling instead of bending, using long-handled tools. At night, hunched over her laptop in the motel room, she entered shipping data until her eyes burned and her fingers cramped. As April approached, the motel costs consumed too much of her savings. Catherine reluctantly moved to a women's shelter in Uptown, trading privacy for financial prudence. Her room, shared with a woman escaping domestic violence, was sparse but clean. The communal bathroom meant waiting in line each morning, carefully timing her routine to accommodate her work schedule. It was at the shelter that Catherine met Dr. Eleanor Reeves. The retired pediatrician volunteered twice weekly, offering basic prenatal care to residents. Tall and silver-haired with a perpetual thermos of tea, Dr. Reeves exuded calm competence. During their first meeting, Catherine asked detailed questions about the developmental stages of her triplets. The books say they're developing fingernails now. Is that simultaneous in all 3, or could one develop faster than the others? Dr. Reeves looked up from her notes, surprise evident. That's an excellent question. Generally synchronized, but slight variations are normal. She studied Catherine. You have a natural knowledge about infant development. Catherine smiled faintly. I always wanted to study pediatric nursing, but my family couldn't afford it. It's never too late, Dr. Reeves commented, especially with your obvious aptitude. Catherine glanced down at her expanding belly. Perhaps someday. Right now, I have other priorities. One evening in late April, Catherine was washing dishes after her coffee shop shift. The manager had the television tuned to CNBC, background noise as they closed. Catherine was mentally calculating how many extra hours she would need to afford the specialized vitamins Dr. Reeves recommended when a familiar voice cut through her thoughts. I'm looking forward to building a traditional family with solid values, Maxwell Richards was saying to an interviewer, his arm wrapped possessively around a slender blonde woman with a diamond ring that caught the studio lights. Cassandra and I share the same vision for our future. The plate in Catherine's hands slipped, shattering on the floor. She stared at the screen at Maxwell's confident smile at the woman who would become his wife. You okay? Her manager called. Fine, Catherine replied automatically, kneeling to gather the ceramic shards, careful to keep her belly clear of the debris. Just clumsy. That night, in the small shelter room lit only by a bedside lamp, Catherine stood before the mirror. Her roommate was working an overnight shift, leaving her mercifully alone. She studied her reflection, the dark circles under her eyes, the utilitarian maternity clothes purchased from a thrift store, her hands red and chapped from cleaning chemicals. She placed both hands on her prominent belly, feeling the occasional flutter of movement beneath her palms. He's wrong about me, about us, she whispered, her voice gaining strength with each word. And one day I'll prove it, not as revenge, but as truth. Her chin lifted slightly, determination hardening her gaze. You 3 will be extraordinary not despite him, but to demonstrate that I was always enough. The babies moved beneath her hands, as if responding to her vow. In May, Dr. Reeves approached Catherine after a checkup, her expression thoughtful. A colleague of mine runs a small pediatric clinic not far from here, she said. They're struggling financially, but James is a good doctor. He needs an administrative assistant. Someone organized who understands medical terminology. Catherine's pulse quickened. Does it include health insurance? Dr. Reeves nodded. Basic coverage, but yes, the pay is modest, I warn you. I'd like to apply, Catherine said immediately. Dr. Reeves smiled. I thought you might. I've already mentioned you. He's expecting your call. The clinic was housed in an aging building with outdated equipment but scrupulous cleanliness. Dr. James Winters, a pediatrician nearing retirement age, interviewed Catherine in an office cluttered with medical journals and children's drawings. Eleanor speaks highly of you, he said, studying her resume. But I should be honest, this clinic is in financial trouble. I can't guarantee employment beyond 6 months. I understand, Catherine replied, but I'm good at organizational systems. Perhaps I could help improve efficiency. Dr. Winters looked skeptical but desperate enough to take a chance. When can you start? Tomorrow, Catherine said without hesitation. As she walked out of the successful interview, Dr. Reeves was waiting in the reception area. The older woman squeezed her arm gently. You have a remarkable spirit, she said. Most people would have broken under the circumstances you faced. Catherine smiled genuinely. I'm not most people, and I have 3 very good reasons to be unbreakable. That evening, Catherine reduced her hours at the coffee shop and gave notice at the cleaning company. The data entry work she kept. It paid well for the hours and could be done remotely. For the first time since January, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond mere survival. While Dr. Reeves presented Catherine to her friend who needed an administrative assistant at a struggling small pediatric clinic, neither of them could imagine that this humble beginning would be the first piece of the empire that would one day rival Richard's enterprises. On a humid May morning in 2008, Catherine Wilson walked into the run-down pediatric clinic of Dr. James Winters for her first day of work. The peeling paint and outdated furniture couldn't diminish her determination. This humble beginning represented something precious: stability and the first step toward building a future for her unborn children. The waiting room was nearly empty, a worrying sign for a medical practice. A battered reception desk sat opposite mismatched chairs. Children's books with dog-eared pages were stacked haphazardly on a small table. Catherine placed her modest handbag beneath the reception counter and surveyed her new workplace. Dr. Winters emerged from his office, eyes weary behind wire-rimmed glasses. At 60, his face carried the lines of someone who had seen both triumphs and disappointments in his decades of practice. "Good morning, Catherine," he said, offering a tired smile. "Thank you for coming on board, though I should warn you again. I can't promise we'll be open until the end of the year. Medicare reimbursement cuts are killing small practices like mine." Catherine nodded calmly. "I understand, Dr. Winters. Let's see what we can do to change that forecast." Her pregnancy was visibly progressing now, the triplets making their presence known through her expanding waistline. Dr. Winters glanced at her belly with professional concern. "Eleanor mentioned you're expecting triplets. How are you feeling?" "Healthy, thank you. Dr. Reeves has been monitoring me closely." Catherine moved toward the filing cabinets. "May I ask where your appointment records are kept?" The morning passed in a blur of discovery. Catherine found a filing system that defied logic, appointment books with conflicting entries, and insurance claims months behind in processing. During lunch, while Dr. Winters saw his only patient of the hour, Catherine began reorganizing the chaotic files without being asked. By late afternoon, she had created a spreadsheet of overdue insurance claims and drafted a more efficient filing method. When the doctor emerged from his last appointment, Catherine was waiting with a notepad. "Dr. Winters, if we reorganize the scheduling system, we could fit in 4 more patients per day without extending your hours." He blinked in surprise. "How would that work?" Catherine showed him her calculations. "Currently, you schedule 30-minute blocks for every patient, but your well child visits typically take only 15 minutes. If we group well visits in the morning and leave complex cases for the afternoon, we maximize efficiency while giving appropriate time to those who need it." Dr. Winters studied her notes. eyebrows rising. "Where did you learn practice management?" "I haven't," Catherine admitted, "but organization and efficiency were essential in my previous position." She didn't mention that her previous position had been managing the household of a pharmaceutical heir who had discarded her like yesterday's newspaper. Within a week, Catherine's scheduling changes showed results. The waiting room, while not full, at least had patients consistently throughout the day. Dr. Winters watched in amazement as she transformed his practice bit by bit. "How did you think of this?" he asked one afternoon, after she implemented a reminder system that reduced no-shows by 30%. Catherine looked up from her desk. "I notice patterns, and I have strong motivation to succeed." During brief lulls between patients and phone calls, Catherine devoured books on healthcare administration borrowed from the public library. She took meticulous notes, applying concepts immediately to the struggling clinic. Her lunch breaks were spent studying, one hand turning pages while the other rested on her growing belly. By July, her pregnancy dominated her physical existence. Moving became cumbersome, sleep elusive, yet Catherine never requested special accommodations, though Dr. Winters increasingly insisted she take breaks. "You're carrying 3 human beings," he reminded her one sweltering afternoon. "Rest is not optional." August brought record heat and increasing discomfort. Catherine's ankles swelled despite her efforts to elevate them beneath her desk. Dr. Reeves, visiting the clinic to check on her, frowned at Catherine's workload. "Bed rest may become necessary soon," she warned. "These babies are growing remarkably well, but your body is under tremendous strain." September arrived with early contractions, false alarms that nevertheless sent Dr. Winters into protective overdrive. He insisted on a reclining chair for her office and banned her from lifting anything heavier than a file folder. "This clinic needs you," he said firmly. "Not just now, but after these babies arrive. We can't risk your health." His words, so different from Maxwell's dismissal, brought unexpected tears to Catherine's eyes. In early October, at 34 weeks, Catherine's water broke during a staff meeting. Dr. Winters drove her to the hospital himself, calling Dr. Reeves en route. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of pain, medical terms, and mounting anxiety. Madison arrived first at 5 pounds 2 ounces, her cry strong despite her premature state. Alexander followed 7 minutes later, slightly smaller but equally vocal. Michael completed the trio 14 minutes after his brother, the smallest at 4 pounds 9 ounces, but with a grip that impressed the delivery nurse. Catherine, exhausted beyond comprehension, gazed at her 3 tiny miracles in their incubators. Tubes and monitors couldn't diminish their perfection. Dr. Reeves stood beside her, a steady hand on her shoulder. "They're fighters," the pediatrician said softly, "just like their mother." The following weeks tested Catherine's endurance like nothing before. The triplets remained in the NICU, requiring round-the-clock care. She divided her time between the hospital and pumping breast milk in the clinic's back office, refusing to take unpaid leave despite Dr. Winters' insistence. "I can't afford it," she explained simply, "and I can work remotely on billing while the babies are in the hospital." When the triplets were finally released after 3 weeks in the NICU, Catherine faced her next challenge, returning to work with 3 newborns. Dr. Winters, seeing her determination, offered an unprecedented solution. "The storage room can be converted to a nursery," he proposed. "It has a window and enough space for 3 bassinets. You can work the front desk and tend to them as needed." Catherine's 6 weeks of unpaid maternity leave, all the struggling clinic could offer, ended in late November. On her first day back, she arrived with 3 infant carriers and a military-grade organization system for managing their care alongside her work responsibilities. Dr. Winters watched in amazement as she answered phones with a baby in one arm, processed insurance forms while humming lullabies, and somehow kept the entire clinic running more efficiently than before she left. "You are the most determined person I've ever met," he commented one evening, finding her calculating the monthly budget with Michael asleep in a sling across her chest. Catherine looked up, exhaustion evident beneath her resolve. They deserve every chance I can give them. As December arrived, bringing Chicago's biting cold, the clinic showed surprising signs of recovery. Patient numbers had increased steadily. Insurance reimbursements, now processed promptly and followed up aggressively by Catherine, provided improved cash flow. Catherine negotiated with medical suppliers during nap times. "If you give us a 15% discount, we can guarantee exclusivity for a year," she bargained with a pharmaceutical representative, while simultaneously rocking Alexander's carrier with her foot. By January 2009, 3 months after the triplets' birth, Catherine had established a rhythm that, while punishing, was sustainable. The babies, growing stronger daily, spent their days in the improvised nursery doctor Winters had created, attended by Catherine between her administrative duties. The waiting room now regularly held patients, not packed, but steadily busy. Dr. Winters' defeated demeanor had given way to cautious optimism. One evening, after the last patient had left, Catherine sat feeding Michael while reading a community college brochure. Madison and Alexander slept peacefully in their carriers nearby. The course catalog was open to the Healthcare Administration section, a program that offered evening classes. "Are you considering taking classes?" Dr. Winters asked, noticing the brochure. Catherine nodded. "I want to understand healthcare systems better. If I'm going to help this clinic thrive, I need formal education." Dr. Winters studied her for a moment. "You know, when Eleanor recommended you, I was desperate enough to hire anyone. I had no idea she was sending me the person who would save my practice." Catherine smiled, shifting Michael to her shoulder for burping. "We're saving it together." Later that night, in her small apartment where 3 cribs occupied the only bedroom while she slept on a sofa bed in the living room, Catherine completed her application for the evening certificate program in healthcare administration. She hesitated only briefly before checking full-time on the enrollment status. As she sealed the envelope, the name Wilson Care flashed through her mind, a fleeting vision that would one day become the logo displayed in 117 clinics across the country in just 15 years. Catherine sealed the envelope containing her application to the Healthcare Administration program, her mind briefly flashing with a vision of Wilson Care emblazoned across a modern building. She smiled, tucking the thought away as she checked on her sleeping triplets. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, she allowed herself a moment of pride in how far they had come. By early 2009, Catherine's apartment had become a masterpiece of organized chaos. The tiny one-bedroom space in a modest Chicago neighborhood was hardly designed for a family of 4, but she had transformed it with ingenious efficiency. 3 cribs occupied the sole bedroom, while Catherine's sofa bed dominated the living room, typically folded away before dawn each morning. Every surface served multiple purposes. The kitchen table functioned as dining space, study desk, and baby-changing station in rotation. Textbooks shared shelf space with infant formula, and Catherine's handwritten schedules covered the refrigerator, feeding times, class hours, work shifts, and study blocks meticulously mapped in color-coded precision. At 5 o'clock each morning, Catherine's alarm vibrated beneath her pillow to avoid waking the babies. She allowed herself exactly 45 minutes of studying before the triplets typically stirred. These precious moments of silence were sacred. Textbooks open beside a steaming cup of coffee, highlighter in hand, absorbing information about healthcare systems and management principles. Administration, reimbursement models, patient satisfaction metrics, she would whisper, committing terms to memory while preparing 3 identical lunchboxes for daycare. When Madison, Alexander, and Michael awakened, typically within minutes of each other at 6, Catherine's carefully choreographed morning routine began. Changing, feeding, dressing 3 7-month-old infants while simultaneously preparing herself for work. She had refined this process to military precision, allowing not a minute to waste. "Good morning, my brilliant ones," she would greet them, kissing each downy head. Ready for another big day of growing? By 7:30, Catherine wheeled the triple stroller into Sunshine Steps, the subsidized daycare 5 blocks from their apartment. The center, while basic, provided reliable care that allowed Catherine to work. "They've been fed at 6:45, she explained to Ms. Loretta, the grandmother-like caregiver who had developed a soft spot for the Wilson triplets. "Michael might need his extra feeding around 10. He's been hungry earlier lately." Catherine would then rush to catch the 7:45 bus to Dr. Winter's clinic, using the 20-minute ride to review notes or complete reading assignments. By the time she arrived at 8:15, she had already accomplished more than most people did in full mornings. The clinic had evolved under Catherine's management. While still modest, new educational posters brightened the walls, the waiting room furniture had been strategically rearranged to create better flow, and a small play area occupied one corner. Behind the reception desk, Catherine had implemented a color-coded filing system that reduced retrieval time by 70%. By spring, Catherine noticed a troubling pattern in their patient cancellations. After analyzing 3 months of data in hand-drawn charts, she requested a meeting with Dr. Winters. "I've identified something significant," she explained, spreading her meticulously prepared graphs across his desk. 73% of our no-shows and last-minute cancellations come from families where both parents work full-time jobs. Dr. Winters studied the charts, impressed by her analysis. "That's concerning but not surprising. What can we do?" Catherine took a deep breath. "I believe we should stay open until 8 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Working parents could bring their children after their shifts without missing work." "Extended hours?" Dr. Winters frowned. "That would increase our overhead significantly." "I've calculated that too," Catherine replied, sliding another paper forward. "If we book efficiently, the additional patients would more than cover the extra costs. And I'm willing to work those evenings." Dr. Winters looked up sharply. "Catherine, you're already taking evening classes 3 nights a week while raising triplets. When would you rest?" She met his gaze steadily. "My schedule can accommodate this. The classes end at 9:30 and the babies are usually asleep by 8. Ms. Loretta has agreed to provide evening childcare on those days." After 2 weeks of consideration, Dr. Winters agreed to a trial period. The response exceeded even Catherine's expectations. The evening slots filled immediately, often with families who had previously relied on emergency rooms for non-urgent care simply because they couldn't take time off work. This was an incredible insight, Dr. Winters admitted after the first month of extended hours. "We've gained 27 new patients and our cancellation rate has dropped dramatically." Catherine's academic performance matched her professional success. Despite studying on buses during lunch breaks and in the precious hours after the triplets fell asleep, she maintained a perfect GPA. Her final project for the healthcare economics class documented the evening hours initiative, complete with financial projections and patient satisfaction data. "This isn't just theoretical," her professor commented after her presentation. "You've already implemented this model and proven its success? That's extraordinary." As the triplets approached their first birthday in October 2009, their distinct personalities emerged with increasing clarity. Madison, with her chestnut curls and thoughtful expressions, displayed remarkable musical sensitivity, humming perfectly in tune with songs she'd heard only once. "Listen to this," Catherine whispered to Dr. Winters one afternoon when Madison was visiting the clinic. She played a simple melody on her phone, which Madison immediately echoed with perfect pitch. Alexander, slightly more reserved than his siblings, demonstrated an uncanny ability to organize and categorize. Before he could form complete sentences, he arranged his blocks by size and color, becoming distressed if the pattern was disrupted. "He's counting," Catherine realized one evening, watching in amazement as Alexander methodically touched each of his stuffed animals, mouthing numbers. "He's not even 18 months old." Michael, the smallest at birth but now catching up rapidly, exhibited exceptional physical coordination. He was the first to climb out of his crib, the first to attempt running, his body seemingly unable to contain his boundless energy. Catherine documented each milestone with a scientist's precision and a mother's pride. Her refrigerator calendar noted not only schedules but achievements. Madison hummed entire Twinkle Twinkle. Alex sorted blocks by size, then color. Michael climbed entire play structure at Park. By late 2010, Catherine was halfway through her certificate program, the clinic was financially stable, and the triplets were thriving despite their modest circumstances. Her professors increasingly urged her to consider pursuing a bachelor's degree after completing her certificate. "You have a natural talent for healthcare management," her program advisor told her. "With your practical experience and academic performance, you could qualify for scholarships." In April 2011, Catherine completed her healthcare administration certificate with highest honors. The graduation ceremony was small but significant, held in the community college's auditorium on a rainy spring evening. The triplets, now 2.5 years old, sat with Dr. Reeves in the audience, clapping enthusiastically when Catherine crossed the stage, though they didn't fully understand the significance. "Mama got prize!" Michael announced loudly, causing ripples of laughter through the audience. Catherine clutched her diploma, eyes finding her children in the crowd. Everything, the sleepless nights, the punishing schedule, the constant exhaustion, crystallized into perfect clarity in that moment. This was just the beginning. 3 weeks after graduation, Dr. Winters called Catherine into his office. On his desk lay a financial report showing a 43% increase in revenue since implementing her suggestions. "Catherine," he began seriously, "when you started here, this clinic was circling the drain. Now we're not just stable, we're growing. This is directly attributable to your innovations." She smiled modestly. "It's been a team effort, Dr. Winters." "James," he corrected. "I think we're well past formalities." He slid a document across the desk. "I want to offer you 25% ownership of the clinic." Catherine stared at the paper, momentarily speechless. I don't have money to invest." "This isn't about money," Dr. Winters explained. "It's about recognizing your contribution and securing your future with us. You've earned this partnership through your work." That evening, Catherine ordered a small brass plaque reading, "Catherine Wilson, Manager and Partner." As she hung it beside her desk the following morning, she couldn't know this would be merely the first of many in a trajectory that would eventually see her name not on a door, but on an empire of health that would change millions of lives. Catherine ran her fingers over the small brass plaque reading, "Catherine Wilson, Manager and Partner." Though modest in size, it represented a monumental shift in her life's trajectory. After years of being dismissed as insignificant, she now had tangible proof of her value hanging beside her desk at the clinic. By summer 2011, Catherine's partial ownership of the clinic emboldened her to implement more ambitious innovations. The triple responsibility of motherhood, work, and education had honed her ability to identify inefficiencies and solve problems creatively. She noticed that follow-up appointments often required minimal physician interaction, especially for common conditions like ear infections or rashes. "James, what if we could see more patients without you being physically present for every interaction?" she proposed one morning, placing a laptop on his desk. Dr. Winters looked up from his patient charts with curiosity. "What are you suggesting?" "Telemedicine," Catherine explained, opening a simple video conferencing program. For follow-ups and medication checks, patients could connect virtually. It would save families travel time and free up appointment slots for new patients who need physical examinations. Dr. Winters adjusted his glasses skeptically. "Our patients are primarily working-class families. Do they all have computers?" "Many do, and those who don't usually have smartphones," Catherine countered. "We could also set up a dedicated station here for those without technology access." After a 2-week trial with selected patients, the results were compelling. Parents embraced the convenience, especially for quick consultations. "I didn't have to take off work just to show that his ear infection cleared up," one mother explained gratefully during a video call. "This saved me half a day's wages." While managing the clinic's transformation, Catherine continued her education, enrolling in a bachelor's program for hospital administration. Evening classes 3 times weekly meant her days often stretched from 5 in the morning until midnight. The triple stroller had been replaced by carefully coordinated walks where the triplets, now approaching 3, held a connected rope Catherine had fashioned to keep them together. Late at night, in the university library after her classes ended, Catherine meticulously researched and drafted an article titled "Redefining Access: A Working-Class Approach to Pediatric Care." The paper detailed the innovations she'd implemented at the clinic, complete with data on reduced no-show rates, improved treatment adherence, and increased patient satisfaction. When she submitted it to a regional healthcare journal, Catherine expected little response. Instead, 3 weeks later, an email arrived from the Illinois Medical Association. "Your article presents compelling solutions to long-standing access issues," the message read. "We would like to invite you to present these findings at our annual pediatric conference in Chicago this September." Catherine stared at the screen, reading the email 3 times to ensure she hadn't misunderstood. Professional recognition of her work, beyond the clinic walls, seemed almost unimaginable. The weeks before the conference passed in a blur of preparation. Catherine agonized over her presentation, practicing during her lunch breaks and after the triplets fell asleep. She faced a more practical concern as well. Her wardrobe consisted primarily of practical, budget-friendly clothes, suitable for chasing toddlers and working in a clinic. The weekend before the conference, Catherine visited a department store's clearance section, scanning racks for something professional yet affordable. She settled on a navy blazer marked down 70%, her first business jacket, purchased with the small discretionary budget she allowed herself from her improved salary. The day of the conference, Catherine stood at the back of the hotel conference room, watching healthcare professionals in expensive suits mingle over coffee. Self-doubt threatened to overwhelm her until Dr. Winters appeared at her side. "You belong here," he said firmly, reading her expression. "Your ideas matter more than your pedigree." When Catherine's turn came to speak, she approached the podium with outward composure that belied her racing heart. Taking a deep breath, she began presenting the data that told her clinic's story. "By extending hours to accommodate working parents, we reduced appointment no-shows by 67%, she explained, her voice growing more confident as she continued. "Our telemedicine initiative increased treatment adherence by 42%, particularly for families with transportation challenges." As she spoke, Catherine noticed a woman in the 3rd row taking extensive notes, nodding with increasing enthusiasm. When the presentation concluded to genuine applause, this same woman approached quickly. "Dr. Melissa Zhang," she introduced herself, extending a business card. "Your model addresses issues the healthcare establishment has been ignoring for decades. Do you have time for coffee?" Dr. Zhang, Catherine soon learned, was both a practicing pediatrician and an angel investor specializing in healthcare innovations. Over coffee in the hotel lobby, the conversation shifted from theoretical to practical at breathtaking speed. "I'd like to invest $500,000 to expand your model to a 2nd location," Dr. Zhang stated matter-of-factly. "Chicago has numerous neighborhoods that could benefit from your approach." Catherine nearly choked on her coffee. "That's substantial." "So is your impact potential," Dr. Zhang replied. "Would your partner be open to expansion?" The following week, Catherine and Dr. Winters sat with a real estate agent, touring potential locations for a 2nd clinic in a working-class neighborhood across the city. They settled on a former dental office that required minimal renovation to convert to their needs. Wilson Winters Pediatric Care read the modest sign above the door when they opened in February 2012. The hyphenated name had been Dr. Winters' suggestion despite Catherine's initial protests. "Your innovations drive our growth," he insisted. "Your name deserves equal billing." As the 2nd clinic gained traction, Catherine's children continued developing their remarkable talents. During Madison's first violin lesson, arranged through a community arts program, the instructor pulled Catherine aside. "She has perfect pitch," he whispered, watching Madison correctly identify notes without visual cues. "That's extremely rare, especially in a child her age." Alexander, already fascinated by numbers, entered a school mathematics competition intended for fourth graders while still in first grade. Catherine sat in the audience trying to contain her nervousness as her 7-year-old son approached problems that challenged children 3 years older. "First place, Division 1, Alexander Wilson," the announcer called. Catherine clapped until her hands hurt, watching Alexander accept his certificate with solemn dignity. Michael's physical prowess manifested in the school swimming program. During the first assessment, the coach stood by the pool, stopwatch in hand, expression shifting from professional interest to stunned disbelief. "Has he had formal training?" the coach asked Catherine afterward. "No, just community pool visits on weekends," she replied. The coach shook his head. His times would qualify for regional competition in the 8 to 10 age group, and he's what, 7? Catherine's pride in her children's accomplishments was matched by her own academic success. Despite her punishing schedule, she maintained top grades in her bachelor's program. As graduation approached in spring 2014, her professors increasingly encouraged her to consider advanced study. On graduation day, the Triplets, now understanding the significance of the ceremony, cheered enthusiastically when Catherine crossed the stage to receive her bachelor's degree in healthcare administration. At 7, they were old enough to appreciate their mother's achievement, if not the sacrifices it had required. "We're so proud of you, Mommy," Madison declared, hugging Catherine's legs after the ceremony. The following week, Catherine met with Dr. Zhang and Dr. Winters to review year-end financials for both clinics. The numbers told a story of remarkable success: patient satisfaction above 90%, growing waiting lists for new patients, and revenue that exceeded projections by 23%. "I think it's time to think bigger," Dr. Zhang suggested, tapping the financial report. "This model has proven itself twice now. There's no reason it couldn't work across multiple locations." Catherine nodded thoughtfully, her mind already calculating possibilities and potential challenges. The vision of Wilson Care that had briefly flashed through her mind years earlier now seemed less like a fantasy and more like an achievable goal. In January 2015, Catherine opened the mail to find a letter bearing the Harvard Business School logo. Scanning its contents, she read that she had been invited to apply for their executive MBA program for Emerging Leaders in Healthcare, a part-time structure that would allow her to continue working while pursuing advanced education. What Catherine couldn't know was that her innovative business model was already being studied as a success case in entrepreneurship classes at the very institution now inviting her to join their ranks. Catherine stared at the Harvard Business School invitation letter, her fingers tracing the embossed letterhead as if to confirm its reality. The prestigious institution was actually inviting her, a single mother who once cleaned houses, to apply for their executive MBA program. The journey from the snowy sidewalk outside Millennium Tower to this moment seemed surreal. Yet here was tangible proof of how far she had come. "Mom? Is everything okay?" Madison asked, noticing Catherine's stunned expression. "Yes, sweetheart. More than okay." Catherine knelt to her children's level, holding up the letter. "Harvard University has invited me to study in their special program." "Harvard?" Alexander's eyes widened with recognition. "That's where presidents go to school," Catherine smiled. "Yes, it is. And if I'm accepted, I'll be studying there part-time while still working at our clinics." "Will you have to leave us?" Michael asked, his small hand clutching her sleeve. "Never," Catherine promised, gathering all three into a tight embrace. "The program is designed for people like me who work full-time. I'll have intensive weeks in Boston occasionally, but most of the work can be done from here." That evening, after tucking the triplets into bed, Catherine called Dr. Reeves to share the news. The elderly pediatrician had become a surrogate mother figure to Catherine, and a loving grandmother to the children. "This is wonderful, Catherine," Dr. Reeves exclaimed. "Of course you must apply." "The residency periods would mean being away from the children for a week at a time," Catherine worried. "I've never been apart from them for more than a workday." "I'll stay with them during your Boston weeks," Dr. Reeves offered immediately. "They're like grandchildren to me. This opportunity is too important to pass up." By spring, Catherine had been accepted into Harvard's executive MBA program with a partial scholarship. The program would allow her to maintain her leadership role at the clinics while expanding her expertise in healthcare management and business strategy. In August, Catherine found herself standing on Harvard's historic campus, feeling distinctly out of place among fellow students who arrived in luxury cars and spoke casually of their private practices and hospital directorships. During introductions, the disparity became painfully clear. Jonathan Whitmore, COO of Memorial Regional, overseeing 600 beds across 3 campuses. Stephanie Chen, founder of 3 urgent care centers in San Francisco, previously surgical resident at Stanford. When Catherine's turn came, she spoke with quiet confidence despite her racing heart. Catherine Wilson, partner and manager of Wilson Winters Pediatric Care in Chicago, operating 2 community clinics serving primarily working-class families. During the first evening reception, Catherine stood alone with her sparkling water until Professor Raymond Levine, a renowned healthcare strategist, approached. "Ms. Wilson, I read your paper on accessible pediatric care models. Quite impressive implementation of theoretical concepts." Catherine blinked in surprise. "You read my paper?" "Indeed. Your model solves a problem most healthcare executives pretend doesn't exist." He gestured around the room. "Many here run institutions that technically serve everyone but practically serve few. Your approach is refreshingly pragmatic." As the program progressed, Catherine's practical experience complemented her classmates' theoretical knowledge. In strategy class, when discussions turned to underserved markets, her insights commanded attention. "The issue isn't just affordability," she explained during one discussion. "It's about designing services that accommodate the realities of working-class lives: extended hours, efficient visits, transparent pricing, and dignified treatment regardless of insurance status." By her second residency period, Catherine had found her voice among Harvard's elite. While her background differed dramatically from most, her results spoke volumes. During the business plan competition in her second semester, Catherine refined her vision for a national network of accessible pediatric clinics. "The Wilson Care Solutions model isn't just another clinic network," she explained to the judges. "It's a revolution in pediatric healthcare access, integrating extended hours, telemedicine, preventative care, and dignified treatment for families regardless of socioeconomic status." The comprehensive plan won first place, attracting attention from several venture capital representatives attending the competition. Catherine returned to Chicago with business cards from investors interested in her vision and a newfound confidence in her ability to scale what she'd built. Back home, the triplets were thriving under the care system Catherine had established. Dr. Reeves moved into Catherine's apartment during Harvard residency weeks, maintaining the children's routines with grandmother-like dedication. At 8 years old, their exceptional abilities continued developing in remarkable ways. Madison's violin playing had advanced to pieces typically mastered by teenagers. Her music teacher had arranged for her to participate in a youth orchestra where she was the youngest member by several years. Alexander had begun taking weekend mathematics enrichment classes at Northwestern University, his analytical mind devouring concepts far beyond his grade level. Michael's swimming coach had started discussions about competitive training, his natural athleticism earning attention from regional trainers. During a rare Saturday with no classes, competitions, or lessons, Catherine sat on a park bench watching her children play, marveling at their resilience and talents. Despite their modest beginnings and absent father, they were flourishing, proof that Maxwell's dismissive assessment of their prospects had been catastrophically wrong. In early 2016, Catherine's vision took a dramatic step toward reality when she incorporated Wilson Care Solutions with initial investment of $1 million from a consortium led by Dr. Zhang and two venture capitalists she'd met through Harvard. The business plan that had won the competition now became her operational blueprint. "I'd like to buy your share of the clinics, James," Catherine told Dr. Winters over lunch. "You deserve to retire comfortably, and I want to expand our model under the Wilson Care Solutions umbrella." Dr. Winters studied her thoughtfully. "You know, when you first walked into my failing clinic, I thought I was doing you a favor. I never imagined you'd transform not just my practice, but potentially pediatric care nationally." The acquisition was finalized in March. By summer, Catherine had opened a third clinic in Chicago's South Side, followed quickly by locations in Evanston and Aurora. Each facility maintained the core principles: extended hours, telemedicine options, transparent pricing, and respect for working families' time constraints. The expansion attracted attention from healthcare publications and investors alike. During a meeting with a prominent healthcare investment group, Catherine encountered her first significant gender-based resistance. "Ms. Wilson," began Thomas Harrington, the group's silver-haired senior partner, "your results are impressive, but rapid scaling requires experienced leadership. Have you considered bringing on a seasoned CEO to manage growth? Someone with gravitas in the industry?" The implication was unmistakable. Catherine smiled politely, her posture perfectly straight. "Mr. Harrington, I built this model from scratch while raising triplets single-handedly and completing 2 degrees. I expanded from 1 failing clinic to 5 profitable ones in under 5 years." She paused, maintaining direct eye contact. "I believe I have sufficient gravitas for the task." Rather than seeking male validation, Catherine cultivated relationships with successful women entrepreneurs, creating a network of mentors who understood the unique challenges she faced. Their guidance proved invaluable as Wilson Care Solutions expanded beyond Illinois. By 2017, the company had opened facilities in Milwaukee and Indianapolis, refining the model with each new location. The Triplets, now 9, had transferred to Lakeside Academy, a school for gifted children where their exceptional abilities could be properly nurtured. Madison's musical talent earned her an invitation to perform with the Chicago Youth Symphony, her small fingers commanding the violin with precocious mastery. After the performance, Catherine wrapped her daughter in a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." "Do you think I could be a professional musician someday?" Madison asked. "You can be anything you set your mind to," Catherine answered, the certainty in her voice leaving no room for doubt. In spring 2018, Catherine completed her Harvard MBA with distinction. The graduation ceremony represented not just academic achievement, but the culmination of a journey that had begun in desperation on a snowy Chicago sidewalk. As she crossed the stage in her regalia, she spotted the Triplets with Dr. Reeves in the audience, their faces shining with pride. By the end of 2018, Wilson Care Solutions operated 12 clinics across 3 states, with a market valuation of $42 million. The company employed over 200 healthcare professionals and served approximately 90,000 children annually. When Fortune magazine published its 40 Under 40 list that December, including Catherine Wilson among the entrepreneurs transforming American healthcare, a copy made its way to Maxwell Richards' desk. He glanced at the magazine briefly, not recognizing the name of his former housekeeper among the list of future business leaders. The copy of Fortune magazine featuring the 40 Under 40 list remained on Maxwell Richards' desk, unopened and unread, his former housekeeper's success passing beneath his notice like so many other opportunities he had missed. Meanwhile, across the country, Catherine Wilson was preparing for the most ambitious phase of her company's growth. Early January 2018 found Catherine in a glass-walled conference room on the 32nd floor of a Chicago skyscraper, addressing a consortium of social impact investors. The space reflected how far she had come, no longer the struggling clinic manager but the poised CEO of a rapidly expanding healthcare company. Wilson Care Solutions has proven its model in 3 states, Catherine explained, gesturing toward the projection screen displaying growth metrics. Our patient satisfaction rates exceed 93%, and our approach reduces emergency room visits for non-emergency pediatric issues by 67%. Now is the time to scale nationally. The lead investor, Amara Patel of Horizon Impact Fund, leaned forward. "What kind of capital injection are you seeking?" $75 million, Catherine replied without hesitation, her confidence backed by meticulously prepared data. "With this investment, we can expand to 15 additional states within 36 months." 3 weeks later, Catherine sat in her office staring at her company's bank statement in disbelief. The screen displayed a newly arrived wire transfer, $75 million. The consortium had not only approved her proposal but expedited the funding. This moment, this validation, felt surreal after years of struggling to be taken seriously. Catherine expanded her executive team with strategic precision. Dr. Elena Mendez, a pediatrician with public health expertise, joined as Chief Medical Officer. James Chen, previously with a leading healthcare technology company, became Chief Technology Officer. Daria Williams, with experience scaling regional healthcare systems, took the Chief Operations Officer role. During their first executive retreat, Catherine outlined her vision in the lakeside conference room of a modest Chicago hotel, chosen deliberately over flashier venues. Wilson Care isn't just about growth for growth's sake, she explained to her leadership team. We're creating a model that fundamentally reimagines pediatric care accessibility. I want a child in rural Alabama to have the same quality care as one in downtown Seattle. Under James Chen's direction, the company developed a proprietary application integrating scheduling, telemedicine, and health monitoring. The platform allowed parents to book appointments, attend virtual follow-ups, and track their children's health metrics in a unified interface. Most healthcare apps are designed by engineers who've never sat in an emergency room with a sick child at 2 a.m, Catherine noted during a development review. Ours needs to work for a single mother with 3 jobs and limited data on her phone. By autumn 2018, Catherine Wilson had become a recognized voice in healthcare innovation. Her appearance on MSNBC's Future of Health segment led to invitations for industry podcasts and regional television programs. "Healthcare shouldn't be a luxury," she stated during a morning show interview that later went viral. "Particularly for children. When working parents have to choose between taking unpaid time off for a doctor's visit or paying rent, our system has failed." As Wilson Care Solutions expanded, the triplets, now entering their preteen years, began asking more pointed questions about their origins. One evening after a school concert where Madison had performed a challenging Vivaldi piece, she approached Catherine with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Mom, Sophia's dad asked about my father after the performance. He said I must have inherited my musical ability from him." Madison studied her mother's face carefully. "Why don't we ever talk about him?" Catherine had prepared for this moment, yet the reality still caught her off guard. That night, after they returned home, she gathered all 3 children in their comfortable living room, a far cry from the cramped apartment of their early years. "You've asked about your father, and you deserve honest answers," Catherine began carefully. "Your biological father is a man I worked for many years ago. When I told him I was pregnant, he wasn't ready to be a father. That was his choice, not a reflection on you 3. Did he ever want to meet us?" Alexander asked, his analytical mind seeking patterns even in emotional matters. "He made it clear that he didn't," Catherine answered truthfully. "Sometimes adults make choices they later regret. His decision allowed us to become the family we are, different from some families, but strong in our own way." The conversation continued with gentle honesty. Catherine answering questions while sheltering them from the cruelest details of Maxwell's rejection. Later that week, she noticed Alexander researching the Richards enterprises online, his expression darkening as he discovered news about federal investigations into the company's clinical trial practices. While Catherine built her healthcare empire, Maxwell Richards' pharmaceutical kingdom was crumbling. The Richards enterprises, once the crown jewel of American pharmaceutical companies, faced mounting accusations of data manipulation in clinical trials and unethical marketing practices. The COVID-19 pandemic that devastated much of the healthcare industry in 2020 became an unexpected catalyst for Wilson Care Solutions' growth. While traditional medical practices struggled with closures, Catherine's company leveraged its existing telemedicine infrastructure to maintain continuous care. While other providers are shutting down, we're doubling our telemedicine capacity, Catherine announced in an emergency executive meeting in March 2020. Families need us now more than ever. The company rapidly trained additional providers for virtual care and created specialized COVID-19 protocols for necessary in-person visits. What began as crisis management evolved into another innovation: hybrid care models that would outlast the pandemic. By December 2020, Wilson Care Solutions operated in 18 states with 83 clinics. Catherine celebrated the opening of the company's 50th location in Denver personally, cutting the ribbon while employees cheered. The modest ceremony reflected her leadership style, focused on mission rather than personal glory. This clinic exists because every child deserves excellent health care, regardless of their parents' work schedule or zip code, she told the small gathered crowd. That's been our mission from day one, and it will remain our mission as we grow. The financial success that accompanied Wilson Care's expansion allowed Catherine to finally provide her children with the material comfort she had long worked toward. In early 2021, she purchased a spacious apartment in an upscale Chicago neighborhood, replacing their adequate but modest home with one that accommodated their growing needs and achievements. "We have actual bedrooms," Michael exclaimed as the triplets raced through the new space, marveling at features most affluent children would take for granted. "And look at this view." The triplets, now 13, continued developing their exceptional talents. Michael won his first national junior swimming competition that spring, setting a new record in his age group. Catherine watched from the stands, tears streaming down her face as he stood on the podium, gold medal gleaming against his chest. Madison's violin playing had advanced to conservatory level, her application videos drawing interest from prestigious music programs despite her young age. Alexander published his first academic paper as a co-author with a Northwestern University mathematician, an unprecedented achievement for a middle school student. In October 2021, the Forbes issue featuring 50 most powerful women in business arrived at Catherine's office. Her assistant placed it on her desk without comment, letting Catherine discover for herself that her photograph graced the cover. "The Quiet Revolutionary Transforming American Healthcare," read the headline above Catherine's image. She wore a simple blue blazer, her expression confident but approachable, the antithesis of corporate arrogance. That evening, after the office emptied, Catherine sat alone with the magazine, staring at her own image with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Her eyes drifted to the framed photograph on her desk. The triplets at their birthday celebration earlier that year, their smiles radiant and uninhibited. "We did it," she whispered to their image, acknowledging the journey they had taken together. From a desperate night on a snowy sidewalk to the cover of Forbes, a transformation that neither Maxwell's rejection nor societal expectations could have prevented. When the invitation to be the keynote speaker at the prestigious American Hospital Association annual gala ball in New York arrived in December 2021, Catherine didn't know that Maxwell Richards would also be attending, now struggling to save his company from the scandals that engulfed it. The invitation to be the keynote speaker at the American Hospital Association annual gala ball rested on Catherine's desk, its embossed lettering catching the late afternoon sunlight. She traced the elegant script with her fingertip, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a desperate young woman abandoned on a snowy Chicago sidewalk to the CEO of a $5 billion healthcare enterprise, the symmetry felt almost poetic. January 2023 brought crisp winter air to New York as Catherine finalized preparations for Wilson Care Solutions headquarters relocation from Chicago. At 41, she had transformed from the uncertain young woman Maxwell had discarded to a commanding presence in the healthcare industry, her name regularly appearing in business publications alongside established titans. The Singapore investors confirmed their commitment, Jennifer, her CFO, reported during their morning video conference. $200 million for the International Expansion Initiative. Catherine nodded, making notes on her tablet. Excellent. That puts us comfortably past $5 billion in market valuation. Not bad for a network that started with a single failing clinic in Chicago, Jennifer remarked with a smile. Catherine glanced out the window of her temporary New York office, taking in the Manhattan skyline. The view was different from Chicago's, but the heights she had reached were undeniable. 117 clinics nationwide, over 3,000 employees, approximately 1.2 million children served annually, numbers that still occasionally stunned her. Back at her Upper East Side penthouse that evening, Catherine reviewed architectural plans for the new headquarters building. The space reflected her journey, elegant without ostentation, innovative yet practical, and designed with both staff and visiting families in mind. She had insisted on an on-site childcare facility with scholarships for employees' children. "Mom, have you seen my beau rosin?" Madison called from her practice room, interrupting Catherine's thoughts. At 15, Madison Wilson had blossomed into a remarkably poised young woman. Her chestnut hair and blue-green eyes made her a striking feminine version of Maxwell, though Catherine never commented on the resemblance. Her Stradivarius violin, a gift from the New York Philharmonic after her performance as their youngest ever guest soloist, rested in its case beside her. "Check the side pocket of your music bag," Catherine suggested, setting aside the blueprints. Alexander appeared in the doorway, adjusting his tie with characteristic precision. At 15, his analytical mind had already produced a paper on number theory published in a prestigious mathematical journal, an unprecedented achievement for someone his age. "The car will be here in 20 minutes, he announced. "We're meeting with Professor Leibowitz about the quantum computing project at 6:30. Michael joined them, his hair still damp from swim practice. His recent medals from Olympic youth qualifiers had attracted national attention, with sports commentators already speculating about his potential in the 2028 Games. "Don't forget we're having dinner with the Changs after your meeting," Catherine reminded them, "and Aunt Eleanor arrives tomorrow for the weekend." The triplets nodded, accustomed to their meticulously organized lives. Dr. Reeves, Aunt Eleanor to the children, had remained a central figure in their family, her medical wisdom and grandmotherly love providing stability through years of rapid change. Catherine observed her children with quiet pride. Raising them alone had been her greatest challenge and her greatest joy. From the cramped apartment where they had shared rooms, worn second-hand clothes, and eaten simple meals, they had risen to extraordinary heights. She had studied while they slept, built her business while they were at school, and never missed a school performance or sports competition. When exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, the memory of Maxwell's cruel dismissal had renewed her determination. Across town, in a significantly reduced but still luxurious apartment, Maxwell Richards adjusted his tie before a mirror, his reflection showing a man weathered by setbacks. At 47, 2 expensive divorces and federal investigations into Richards Enterprises' unethical practices had substantially diminished both his fortune and reputation. "The board meeting summary, sir," his assistant said, placing a folder on his desk. Maxwell skimmed the report, his jaw tightening at phrases like continued market devaluation and pending litigation costs. The pharmaceutical empire his father had built and he had inherited was crumbling under the weight of scandal, falsified clinical data, price-fixing allegations, and marketing violations. "The American Hospital Association Gala is this Friday," his assistant reminded him. "You're confirmed to attend." Maxwell nodded absently. The invitation had come as a surprise, a courtesy extended perhaps out of respect for his family name rather than his current standing. He viewed it as a critical networking opportunity, a chance to rebuild connections in a healthcare industry that had begun treating him as a pariah. "Have the car ready at 7, he instructed, "and prepare briefing notes on key attendees." On Thursday morning, Catherine led a planning meeting for Wilson Care Solutions' expansion into Canada. The Toronto clinic would mark their first international location, with plans for London and Singapore to follow. "Our model translates well to other markets with working parents and healthcare access challenges," Catherine explained to her executive team. "The core principles remain the same regardless of geography." Later that afternoon, she reviewed her speech for the gala while the triplets attended to their respective activities, Madison practicing Tchaikovsky, Alexander solving complex equations, and Michael completing his targeted training regimen. "You'll knock them dead tomorrow," Jennifer assured her, reviewing the final draft. "Your story resonates because it's authentic." Catherine smiled. "It's not just my story, it's ours. Every parent who struggled to access care for their child, every provider who wanted to serve patients better but couldn't in traditional systems." Friday evening arrived with the crisp elegance of early New York spring. Catherine stood in her bedroom as her stylist made final adjustments to her Valentino gown, a deep navy creation that conveyed authority and sophistication without ostentation. The woman who had once owned a single good dress now selected from designer options, though she maintained her preference for understated elegance. "Mom, you look amazing," Madison declared, entering with her brothers. All three were impeccably dressed for the gala. Madison in a simple but elegant midnight blue dress, the boys in tailored suits that hinted at the men they would soon become. "The car is downstairs," Alexander reported, checking his watch. "We should leave in approximately 7 minutes to account for midtown traffic patterns." Catherine smiled at his precision. "Always my reliable timekeeper." In the limousine, Catherine reviewed her notes while the triplets discussed their summer plans. Madison's intensive music program in Vienna, Alexander's advanced mathematics workshop at MIT, Michael's Olympic training camp in Colorado. "You all remember we have that lunch with Aunt Eleanor tomorrow to celebrate her birthday, right?" Catherine reminded them, glancing up from her speech cards. "How could we forget?" Michael replied with a grin. "She practically brought us into the world." The Plaza Hotel glowed with golden light as their car pulled up to the entrance. Photographers captured the arrivals of healthcare industry luminaries, business leaders, and political figures. Catherine, now accustomed to the flashes since becoming a prominent business figure, guided her children with practiced elegance. In the opulent lobby, Catherine greeted colleagues and admirers. The New York Health Commissioner, a senator, several hospital CEOs, all wanted a moment with the woman who had transformed children's healthcare access. "Catherine, your latest expansion into rural communities is revolutionary," commented the American Medical Association president. "Thank you, but credit goes to our strategic planning team," Catherine replied with characteristic modesty. "They identified that we could serve an additional 200,000 children annually with relatively modest investment." As Catherine moved toward the main ballroom, she had no idea that fate was preparing an encounter that would redefine the meaning of her journey. At the opposite end of the room, Maxwell Richards had just arrived, divorced and struggling to keep his family company relevant after a series of financial scandals and allegations of manipulated clinical trials. While two cars approached the Plaza Hotel that gala night, destiny was preparing an encounter that would not only confront the past, but completely redefine the future of both and reveal a truth Maxwell Richards could never have imagined. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom sparkled under massive crystal chandeliers, the cream of American healthcare society navigating between elegant tables and flutes of champagne. Catherine Wilson moved through the space with practiced grace, her Valentino gown catching the light as she acknowledged greetings from hospital directors and pharmaceutical executives. Following a few steps behind, the triplets absorbed the opulence with varying degrees of interest. Madison noting the chamber quartet, Alexander analyzing the room's architecture, and Michael cataloging the notable athletes present among the healthcare elites. "Catherine, there you are," called Dr. Lawrence Keller, a renowned cardiologist who had championed her work. "The commissioner was just asking about your rural initiative, and there's someone I'd like you to meet, a pioneer in pharmaceutical distribution on the West Coast." Catherine turned with a ready smile that froze on her face as Dr. Keller guided his companion toward her. 15 years evaporated in an instant. The room seemed to slow around her as her eyes locked with Maxwell Richards. His face registered confusion, then recognition, followed by undisguised shock. He had aged, fine lines at his eyes, silver threading through his once dark hair, but remained unmistakably the man who had shattered her world with clinical precision. "Catherine?" His voice emerged barely above a whisper. "Maxwell." She gripped her water glass more tightly, grateful she wasn't holding champagne that might betray her suddenly trembling hand. Dr. Keller glanced between them, sensing the sudden tension. "You know each other?" "Briefly. In Chicago. A long time ago," Catherine answered with studied calmness that masked the emotional hurricane within. Maxwell seemed unable to tear his gaze from her, absorbing the complete transformation of the woman before him. The Catherine of his memory, young, uncertain, deferential, had been replaced by this commanding presence in designer evening wear, subtle but obviously valuable jewelry, and an air of confidence that radiated like a force field. "You look different," he finally managed. "Life tends to change us," Catherine replied evenly. "I heard Richards Enterprises is facing challenges." Maxwell cleared his throat uncomfortably at the mention of his company's troubles. "Transitional moments. The pharmaceutical market is volatile." "Indeed it is, especially when regulators discover falsified data in clinical trials," Catherine commented conversationally, as if discussing the weather. Maxwell's face hardened, but before he could respond, Madison approached their small group. "Mom, the governor is looking for you. Something about that school health initiative." She paused, noticing the stranger. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." The world collapsed around Maxwell Richards in that moment, his eyes fixed on the teenager's face, an uncanny mirror of familiar Richards family features. The same eye shape, the same distinctive chin that had appeared in family portraits for generations. Blood drained from his face as Alexander and Michael joined them, completing the impossible-to-deny picture. "Madison, Alex, Michael, this is Maxwell Richards, CEO of Richards Enterprises." Catherine introduced them with impressive composure. "Mr. Richards, my children." "Triplets," Maxwell whispered, more to himself than to the others. "Pleased to meet you." Alex extended his hand politely, unaware of the moment's significance. "Your company developed that anticoagulant that was pulled from the market last year, correct? I read a fascinating study on the statistical failures in the trials." Maxwell automatically shook the hand of the son he'd never known, unable to respond as his eyes traveled between the three adolescent faces. The Richards traits, tracing back generations, were unmistakably stamped on each of them. "That man watching us looks weird, Mom," Michael murmured, leaning toward Catherine. "Why is he staring at Alex like that?" The question, audible to those nearby, initiated a ripple of whispers that spread through the ballroom. Hospital executives, renowned physicians, and political figures began noticing the extraordinary resemblance between the teenagers and Maxwell Richards. You never told me," Maxwell finally spoke, his voice unsteady. "Triplets?" "You never asked," Catherine replied, keeping her tone perfectly controlled. "In fact, you made it quite clear you didn't want to know." "I would have," he began, but Catherine interrupted with a slight wave of her hand. Please don't insult our intelligence with revisionist history. At that moment, the event announcer spoke into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention for our honoree tonight, the CEO of Wilson Care Solutions, Catherine Wilson. Applause echoed through the ballroom. Maxwell remained frozen as Catherine walked gracefully to the stage. The crowd quieted as she took the microphone. Thank you. I'm honored to receive this recognition. Her voice was steady, her posture impeccable. 15 years ago, I was working as an administrative assistant in a small, failing pediatric clinic in Chicago, a single mother of newborn triplets, without a college degree, without connections, without capital. Maxwell's eyes widened as murmurs increased throughout the ballroom. Many told me it was impossible, that someone of my background couldn't build something meaningful. Catherine paused briefly, her eyes finding Maxwell's. Today, Wilson Care Solutions is valued at $5.2 billion, employs over 3,000 healthcare professionals, and serves more than 1 million children annually. The audience applauded enthusiastically, except for Maxwell, who remained motionless, his face ashen. We've built this empire focusing on one simple principle. Every person deserves dignity, regardless of their origin or circumstances. No one is insufficient or temporary in the universe of care we've created. The words struck Maxwell like precisely aimed arrows, the same words he had used to dismiss her 15 years earlier. After her acclaimed speech, Catherine returned to the table where her children waited, aware of Maxwell watching her from across the room. It wasn't long before he approached again. "We need to talk," he said quietly, struggling to maintain composure. "I don't see the necessity," Catherine responded tranquilly. "They're my children," Maxwell insisted, his voice trembling with emotion or anger, perhaps both. Catherine smiled serenely. "Biologically? Yes, in every other aspect that matters. You made that decision 15 years ago, remember? I was young, irresponsible. And I was young, pregnant, and abandoned," Catherine completed. "Funny how we both made choices that defined our lives, isn't it?" Around them, guests observed the intense conversation with growing interest. A New York Times photographer, sensing a story, discreetly captured the moment. "You could have contacted me," Maxwell argued. "I had a right to know." It was at this moment that Madison, who had been listening attentively, intervened. "Wait, what's happening, Mom?" Catherine took a deep breath, looking at her 3 children. "Mr. Richards and I knew each other in Chicago before you were born." "I'm your father," Maxwell declared abruptly, unable to contain himself. The silence that followed was absolute. Madison's hand flew to her mouth. Alexander frowned, analyzing Maxwell's face with new interest. Michael stepped back, instinctively moving closer to his mother. "Is that true?" Alex finally asked, his voice analytical, even facing the shocking revelation. "Yes," Catherine answered simply. "Biologically, Maxwell Richards is your father." "Why did you never tell us about him?" Madison questioned, confused. "Because he made it very clear he wanted no part in our lives," Catherine explained, her voice calm but firm. "That's not fair," protested Maxwell. "You never gave me the chance to—" "Chance?" Catherine interrupted, her composure finally cracking. "You called my children an error. You offered me money to solve my problem. You threatened to use your legal team against me if I insisted on having this child. Those were your exact words, Maxwell." Around them, gala guests listened in shock. Several pharmaceutical industry executives and medical professionals, once Maxwell's allies, discreetly distanced themselves. Ironically, Catherine continued, regaining her composure, "I should thank you. Your rejection gave me the determination needed to build something extraordinary. I didn't need your name, your money, or your approval to raise 3 extraordinary human beings. Ironically, my nothing now values 5 times more than your entire family fortune." Maxwell looked around, realizing the irreparable damage to his already fragile reputation. His declining empire now in stark contrast to the success of the woman he had discarded. "I've changed," he tried one last time, looking at the triplets. "I'd like to know you." Alexander, always the analytical one, spoke first. "There are interesting studies on the impact of absent father figures on psychological development. Perhaps it's a valid social experiment." Madison and Michael exchanged uncertain glances while Catherine remained silent, allowing her children to form their own opinions. "This isn't a decision to make at a gala," Catherine finally said. "Children, it's getting late. We have a full day tomorrow." With supreme dignity, Catherine led her children toward the exit, leaving Maxwell Richards alone in the center of the crowded ballroom, a perfect metaphor for the emptiness his choices had created in his life. While a photographer from the New York Times captured the historic moment, no one could predict that the next day's front page, pharmaceutical heir confronted with past, unknown children and the CEO he rejected, would be just the beginning of an avalanche that would completely restructure the lives of everyone involved. As Catherine led her children toward the Plaza Hotel exit, the weight of 15 years of silence lifted from her shoulders. The confrontation she had neither sought nor avoided had finally happened, and the world had witnessed Maxwell Richards face the consequences of his callous dismissal. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Catherine's Upper East Side penthouse as she calmly sipped her tea, reviewing the New York Times spread across her kitchen island. The front-page photograph captured the exact moment of recognition. Maxwell's stunned face contrasted with Catherine's composed demeanor, the triplets standing between them. The headline was unequivocal: "Pharmaceutical heir confronted with past, unknown children and the CEO he rejected." "Mom?" Madison appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her expression uncertain. "We're in the newspaper." "We are," Catherine confirmed, pouring a cup of tea for her daughter. Madison slid onto a bar stool, accepting the steaming cup. "Why did you never tell us about him?" Catherine chose her words carefully, aware that this conversation would shape her children's understanding of their origins. "At first because the pain was too intense. Later because you were too young to understand the complexity. And as you grew older—" She paused, meeting Madison's eyes. "Because he did nothing to earn a place in your lives." Alexander and Michael joined them soon after, each processing the revelation in their characteristic ways. While Madison approached the situation emotionally, Alexander had spent the night researching Maxwell Richards, compiling an impressive dossier on the man he had just discovered was his biological father. His company has lost 63% of its market value in the past 3 years, Alexander reported, tablet in hand. Multiple federal investigations, 2 divorces, and a pattern of ethical complaints dating back to when you would have worked for him. Michael remained protectively close to Catherine, his stance slightly defensive. "So what happens now?" he asked, the question directed at no one in particular. "That partially depends on you," Catherine answered thoughtfully. "You're old enough to make some decisions for yourselves. If you want to know him, I won't stand in your way." Catherine's phone rang incessantly throughout the morning. Journalists, colleagues, friends seeking confirmation or offering support. Her public relations team had issued a brief statement requesting privacy during this personal family matter, but the story had already ignited the media landscape. Across town, Maxwell Richards faced a storm of different magnitude. The Richards Enterprises Board of Directors had convened an emergency meeting, the company's already precarious reputation now facing another devastating blow. "This is a personal matter," Maxwell protested in the wood-paneled boardroom where generations of Richards had directed company strategy. "This is a public relations disaster," countered the board chairman, slamming his palm on the polished table. "Abandonment of a pregnant employee, paternity denial, amid accusations of clinical data falsification? Do you comprehend the damage this is causing?" By midday, Richards Enterprises stock had dropped 12%, investors were demanding explanations, and Maxwell's office had received calls from every major news outlet in the country. That afternoon, Catherine received an unexpected call from Cassandra Beaumont Richards, Maxwell's first ex-wife. "I hope I'm not intruding," Cassandra began, her voice cultured but hesitant. "I saw the Times this morning." "It's fine," Catherine replied, surprised by the contact. "I always knew something was wrong," Cassandra continued. "He adamantly refused to have children despite family pressure. Now I understand why." Their conversation, brief but revealing, provided Catherine with unexpected insight into the man Maxwell had become after their paths diverged. A man haunted by choices he would never acknowledge, building relationships destined to fail because they were founded on omissions. As the week progressed, the story expanded beyond Catherine and Maxwell. Investigative journalists discovered that Catherine wasn't the only employee who had suffered mistreatment at Richards Enterprises. Former accusations, previously silenced through confidential settlements, resurfaced in this new context. What began as a personal drama evolved into a broader examination of corporate culture and accountability. On the 7th day after the gala, Maxwell appeared in the lobby of Catherine's building. The security desk called up immediately. "Mr. Maxwell Richards is requesting to see you, Ms. Wilson. Shall I send him away?" Catherine considered briefly. "No, I'll come down." When the elevator doors opened, Catherine was struck by Maxwell's transformation. He appeared to have aged years in a single week, his posture less commanding, dark circles shadowing his eyes, his designer suit somehow less impressive than it would have been before. "I need to see them," he insisted without preamble. "They're my children." "They don't want to see you right now," Catherine informed him calmly. Maxwell's jaw tightened. "You've poisoned them against me." Catherine smiled softly. "I never needed to do that. Your own actions spoke for themselves." "I've been temporarily removed from the chairmanship," Maxwell revealed, running a hand through his graying hair. 15 years building that company." "Interesting," Catherine observed. "I also spent 15 years building something. The difference is that I built on truth and purpose, not on lies and selfishness." Maxwell studied her with new understanding. "You hate me. That's the most fascinating thing, Maxwell. I don't hate you. Not at all." Catherine spoke with genuine surprise at her own realization. "For years I thought I did, but now I realize I simply outgrew you. You're irrelevant to my happiness." Those words struck Maxwell more deeply than any accusation or shouting could have done. For the first time, he fully comprehended what he had lost, not just a family, but the chance to be part of something meaningful and lasting. 2 weeks later, Alexander decided to meet Maxwell for lunch. As a natural scientist, his curiosity prevailed. Madison and Michael opted to wait. Catherine respected all their decisions. "How was it?" Catherine asked when Alex returned, his expression thoughtful. "Genetically fascinating," he answered with his characteristic dry humor. "We have the same mannerisms when discussing numbers, but—" He hesitated. "He seems like a very lonely man." In the following spring, the Richards Enterprises board voted for Maxwell's permanent removal from the chairmanship. The company bearing his family name would now be led by external executives. His net worth, once measured in billions, had significantly diminished. Meanwhile, Wilson Care Solutions continued its expansion, opening its first international clinic in Toronto. Catherine was appointed by the United Nations as a special consultant for children's health, and the triplets prepared for university visits, all with bright futures ahead. On a June afternoon, Catherine encountered Maxwell by chance in a Manhattan cafe. He seemed smaller somehow, less imposing. "How are they?" he asked, referring to the triplets. "Well, Madison's been accepted to Juilliard. Alex received offers from Harvard and MIT. Michael is deciding between Stanford and UCLA for swimming." Maxwell nodded, a mixture of pride and regret crossing his face. "You've done an amazing job, Catherine. On your own." "Not alone," she corrected. "I had help from people who truly cared." Dr. Reeves, my early employees who believed in the vision, teachers who saw potential in my children. I should have been one of those people, Maxwell admitted. Yes, you should have, Catherine agreed without bitterness. But your absence taught us something valuable, that no rejection defines our worth. Perhaps that's the most important lesson my children could have learned. As she rose to leave, Catherine felt finally free from the weight she had carried for 15 years. It wasn't revenge that had brought this liberation, but the simple truth of her own journey. Your rejection should have destroyed me, she said as a parting thought. Instead, it rebuilt me stronger. Ironically, I owe you part of who I became. For that, and only that, I thank you. Catherine walked out of the cafe and down sunlit Park Avenue toward the future she had built, not in the shadow of Maxwell's abandonment, but illuminated by her own unwavering strength. Maxwell remained behind, alone with his coffee and the complete understanding of the human empire his cruel words had inadvertently helped build, an empire of which he would never truly be part. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.